were Pentecostals. But that was not quite the same when I was Catholic. So then I got a new thought, I brought that with me, but I missed some of the music, the enthusiasm, the excitement. So I thought, maybe one day I could be like a New Thought evangelist. Brothers and sisters of the congregation, we are here today to raise consciousness. For we know there's only two emotions in the world we need to be concerned with. The all-encompassing emotion of love and its perceived opposite, fear. When you're in a state of love, it's a heavenly experience. But when you're in a state of fear, it's like being in hell. Now, we here at Namaste Center, we don't believe in a place called hell. Can I get an amen? Because some of y'all would have been going for sure. But there is no place called hell. But there is a virtual hell, and it's the hell of fear-based thinking. And it's a fiery pit. By the way, I bet you will never hear fiery pit ever again in this center. So Angelina and I came from Orlando, Florida with one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to love the hell out of you. And one of the ways we get to do that is we get to share Angelina's beautiful voice with you. So many years ago, we were up in Sedona, and after we left Sedona, we were very, very high from the experience. It's a very high vibration place. And Angelina was plucking on her guitar, and she said, I feel so grateful. Like, I'm thinking this might have been 2003. She said, I feel so grateful. She was doing just that right there, plucking a little Beethoven music. And I said, well, why don't you sing about how grateful you feel? She said, well, what do you mean? I said, write a song. She goes, well, I've never written a song. And I said, awesome. Everybody that ever did anything great had never done it. So you're in awesome company. So this is what she started singing. My. Why? Because we love you. My.
Well, I have a story for you about gratitude. Years ago, I was at a Wendy's drive-thru because I love French fries. And I know they say they're not really good for you, but I can't help it. I have to get French fries here and there. So anyway, I was at the Wendy's, and when I got to the window, I asked the young man, "How are you?" And he answered with, "I am grateful." And so that's so surprised me and really was a wonderful thing to hear. And so what it did is it brought gratitude to me. And when you say it, it brings gratitude to you and those around you. And I was just so blown away by a young person answering with that as well. So I encourage you, the next time someone says, "How are you?" to answer with, "I am grateful."
How are you?
I'm grateful.
And sometimes you'll say, "Oh yeah, about what?" And you might have to think about it. But while you're thinking about it, you'll feel better. So I learned, your name's Claire, right? I learned something new from Claire today. Because I asked her if she had ever heard of Mr. Rogers. And I said, "Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood." She goes, "Kinda, there's a new version of that out now." What's that called?
Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood.
Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood. So the legacy lives on.
Yes.
Daniel change his shoes? Awesome. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to Angelina and Armand's neighborhood. It's a special day. It's a special word. We have a special phrase for the day. And you may be wondering why I'm wearing this doctor coat. Obviously, I'm not a real physician. I'm a metaphysician. Actually, I never met a physician. I didn't learn. Might be wondering why my shoes don't match. It's because I'm a cross-dresser. Y'all are awesome. Some churches don't know what to make of me. Actually, one of the reasons I like to wear things that are a little bit silly or mismatched shoes or fun, colorful socks is just to remind myself not to take myself so seriously. Now, people that know me briefly would think I'm the last person to take myself seriously. But the people that know me well know I have a huge history of anxiety and depression and taking myself too seriously. So I work constantly to keep myself positive and feeling good and practicing principles. And oftentimes it feels like a lot of work, but it is worth it. We started about 3 years ago a 12-step group called Unhappiness Anonymous. And the theory behind Unhappiness Anonymous, it was based upon the book, The Untethered Soul. Has anyone read The Untethered Soul? So what Michael Singer talks about is that when unhappiness comes in, if we can really recognize it, not get absorbed into it, but recognize it, then we can allow it to take its course. But we can watch it like we watch a movie when unhappy things happen in a movie. So we still allow ourselves to let the feelings, the emotions to run their course, but we can always go back to our own inner joy that is the observer watching our human self be human, which is what they were designed to do. Okay, and if you watch a movie, I don't know about you, but I like a movie that takes me on an emotional roller coaster. I just don't come out of the theater and for the next 6 years complain about the way it ended. But we often do that with our lives, okay? We take the things that happen in the movie of the Matrix called our lives, and we let it take us to a hopeless place. And all it needs to be is expressed and witnessed. Okay, so we started the Unhappiness Anonymous with the goal of whenever we saw ourselves go into that, become the observer and talk to that unhappy person in the third person and say, what is it you need right now? You need some time alone, you need some loving, but not getting pulled into it with them. And and we've stayed relatively sober for 3 years from that. So, okay. So, it is customary in our neighborhood. By the way, if you're not brave enough to wear mismatched shoes, I don't wear them out in public anymore because they just get too many looks. But if you're not quite ready for that, you could wear some mismatched socks now and then. It'll help you to take life a little more seriously. If you own a dryer, you have a pair. Maybe you need to buy them. So it's customary in the neighborhood to have a word or phrase. And our word and phrase today is affirmative prayer. Let's say that together. Affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer is the basis of much of the human potential movement, much of what they call New Thought. Now, when I first heard that, my brain scrambled a little bit because I went, wait, you're either praying because you ain't got it or you're affirming it because you do got it. How can it be an affirmative prayer? That sounds like an oxymoron, like patiently waiting. I heard something the other day, they said conditional love is an oxymoron. If it's conditional, it's not love. So it's just either love or it's conditional, but it's not conditional love. Those don't go together, and I never heard of it quite that way. And I guess unconditional love is redundant. Well, I learned that in the School of Redundancy. Okay, so finally I started to get wrapped around the idea of affirmative prayer. That what you're doing is you're tapping in to a God knowing in advance and being grateful in advance. That's a whole different energy. Because here's how I used to pray. Bless you. Dear God, out there with whom I have no connection, I know you have all the stuff. I don't have enough. Could you please send more? Anybody ever pray that way? That's kind of the way we were taught to pray. And there's a disconnect there. It's just not it's not a very effective way to pray or meditate. Now it does work now and then, we call that grace, but it's not effective. It's kind of like going into a bank and saying, I'd like to make a withdrawal. And they say, great, do you have an account here? And you go, nope. They probably won't give you one unless you wear a mask, and then your odds are greatly improved. But so that's what you're doing when you're not being affirmative. But an affirmative prayer shifts a lot. And when you affirm, you get into alignment with what you already know to be your highest truth. So if you're affirming wellness, if you're affirming prosperity, if you're affirming relationship health, then even if you're struggling with it in the now moment, your human self is struggling, your higher self knows those things all the time. Kind of like in that movie, The Secret, when he pretended like he had the car of his dreams and pretended to lock it from his house. It was like he's affirming that the car of his dreams is going to come. And it can be working with anything. And so, one thing I realized was I needed to start doing more affirmations. Now, I don't know about you, but I got heavy duty into affirmations to where I would spray paint them on my van. You may have seen them at one time, spray paint peace and love, and spray paint the drywall in my house. You can see people that have lots of affirmations. Sometimes they'll have them on the refrigerator. They'll say things like, don't ever go in here, just affirmations here, there, all over the mirrors. So, but I got confused. And I'll tell you why. I thought that I was doing an affirmation so God would know what it is I desired. And then I remember something from catechism. Before we even ask, God already knows. And so what that taps into me is God knows the highest and best for me and how I can evolve and serve humanity the best at all times. It's not my job to get God to understand that. It's my job to get me to understand that. So when we do an affirmation, I'll give you an example of my little analogy of what I think happens when we do an affirmation relative to God. Dear God, I desire more money. And God says, duh. Now that may sound a little bit flippant and irreverent, but don't we always talk about God as being all-knowing? Wouldn't an all-knowing, omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, all the omnis, wouldn't an all-knowing God already know everything? So wouldn't your affirmations be no news to God? Dear God, I desire to attract my ideal romantic partner so I can share my love, life, and ministry with forever. And God says, duh. Where do you think you got the desire? Oh, before we even ask, God already knows. Now here's some really good news about God. Sometimes we ask for things that don't happen, and it turns out to be really good. Like Garth Brooks said, thank God for unanswered prayers. There are things that you have said you wished would happen that didn't, because your higher self knew that would not be good for you. For many of us, that was when we wished our first marriage would last forever. Who's glad that didn't happen? Okay, but you still, your higher self knows what's best for you. And so my prayers became very different when I realized that my affirmations were for me to get in alignment with what my higher self, God's best intention was for me. It became very different. It became more of, dear God, with whom I'm completely connected, within me and I'm within you. Thank you for all my blessings. Thank you in advance for this thing that I'm affirming on my refrigerator or mirror, because I already know you know how to have that happen. And it's already coming my way. And I also know that or better is available. I also know if something is not good for me and my ego thinks it is, my higher self will direct me elsewhere. And I thank you for that too. And in this gratitude, I will do these affirmations so I can get into alignment with what you already know, God. Thank you. And so it is. Namaste. So before we call Reverend Charlotte up again, I have one simple question for all of you. How are you?
Grateful.
And so it is.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
For being here today, truly, and thank everyone else for being here today. And make sure you come back for the concert at 2. It's going to be a blast. It's fun.
It's going to be a variety show. And for you folks that are here for the first time, please give Reverend Charlotte a second chance and come back next week.